welcome to the Football Hipsters podcast. It's that time again. It's time for another interview. This week I'm going to be handing over to Tom. Before I do, I'd like to introduce our guest at this time, and he is an expert on Austrian football. You won't be surprised to know that with Tom's love for Salzburg. He is Mr. Tim Armitage, and he works with the guys at Football Radar. He's an Austrian football analyst. So good evening to you, Tim.
Hey guys, how's it going?
All good, my friend, all good. I will hand over at this point to Tom. Tom, I believe you got some questions for our guest. So
plenty.
Over to you, my friend.
Okay, how you doing, Tim?
Yeah, very good, thank you, very good.
Good. Okay, yeah, so I thought just to start off, ease the listeners in, just tell us a bit about yourself and sort of how you got into Austrian football.
Okay, so I'm originally from the northeast. I'm a Newcastle fan. I moved down to London in 2010. Where I studied business management at King's College. During the final year of study, I got to the point where I was like, I'm really not that into business. It was something I was good at school, and I wanted to go into a football side of things. I was lucky enough to find Football Radar just literally through a Google search. Went through the application process, and I became what we call a watcher. And essentially, you just watch games from all around the world, recording events. And I worked my way up through the company, and I was eventually offered the role as the Austrian Bundesliga analyst.
Nice, fair play.
So it was a pretty organic process. I had no previous knowledge on the league or anything like that, but it was one of those things where they said, well, we're not going to go live with it for a few weeks yet. So I had, I think, about 6 weeks to get to grips with it, watch some games back from the previous season and stuff like that.
Yeah. So when they said to you, like, would you want to do the Austrian, or you're going to do the Austrian league, was you taken back like something that you wanted to get interested in, or was it completely sort of new, I don't really know anything, something I want to do?
A bit of both, really. I'm the kind of person who, I'll either put everything or nothing into it, and I put everything into it. I was really excited by the prospect of it. The company had never had an Austrian analyst before it, so it was something I knew I could make the league my own.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. It was a really cool opportunity. I took a bit of the hand off.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. So, in terms of like the Austrian league and Austrian football itself, like, how would you say the league, the top tier, like compares to other leagues around Europe in terms of quality and sort of the publicity it gets throughout Europe?
I mean, you can tell from like the coefficients and things like that it's probably on par with most Central European leagues. I think that's fair to say. So like Romania and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think the top clubs, Salzburg in their prime a couple of seasons ago, easily could have made it in the Premier League as like a mid-table club. They were playing that well.
Yeah.
And you can tell the players who then leave the league, so essentially outgrow it. They go into top sides. I mean, Sadio Mane being linked with Man United, Munich. He was smashing it for Salzburg a few years ago. So certain teams are much bigger than the league, and hence they go on to do quite well in Europe and things like that. But I think the league on the whole, I mean, you look at the bottom 5 clubs in the league, and you think this is like League One, League Two kind of stuff. It's not great.
Yeah.
But I think the league as a, if you take into like the strengths of the top clubs and then maybe the weaknesses of the bottom clubs, I think you're looking at, especially this year because it's been much tighter, you're looking at a pretty average European league.
Okay, yeah, all good. So like, so the Sadio Mane, was that like a big deal that happened in Austria when the transfer went through to go to a Premiership club?
Yeah, I mean, I was a big fan of Mane, but his temperament around the time of the transfer, I felt he let the club down a lot. He left prior to a really important second leg against Malmo in the Champions League qualifiers, and Salzburg had, I think it was a 2-0 lead going into the second leg, and they blew it, lost 3-0.
Yeah.
And he ruled himself out for the second leg. He just didn't travel with the side, which is fair enough. But it was one of those things where, come on, mate, just give him a hand. So I mean, it's definitely the right move for his career. but I thought it could have been handled better from his point of view.
Okay. So, like, you touched on the point about the lower sort of teams rate more towards League One and League Two in the Premiership, but how, like, the competitive, like, spread throughout the Bundesliga, is it kind of really split, or is there sort of middle grounds in the middle, or?
Well, I think because I've only been watching the past couple of seasons, and I definitely think this is the closest the sides have been for a long time. I mean, recently the form, form means nothing. I think the team in the best form at the minute, Reed, who were almost definitely going to get relegated. People were already looking ahead to next season because there was just nothing there. They had 2 wins after 15 games. And all of a sudden, they've now won 3 on a trot, and they've dragged another 2-3 teams back into a relegation battle. So yeah, I think it is. And those wins have come against. I think yes, it was Grodig, Austria Vienna, and then against Altach away as well, which is not an easy result. So they've come against decent teams and teams around them as well. Rapid lost away at Admira midweek, and Admira had finished 9th the past 2 seasons, and they're now in 4th. I mean, it's obviously things change every season due to like transfers and different management and stuff like that. But I think this season's definitely it's going to be close for the title, but also really close at the bottom of the league, which hasn't always been the case.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting seeing how different teams have come up, and so it's been a bit of a trend around Europe, and you look even in England with the likes of Leicester doing so well. So there's definitely parallels you can see. So obviously the listeners know that I do our 90-90 section on Red Bull Salzburg, so it would be a bit weird if I didn't start going into questions on Red Bull Salzburg.
Yeah.
So so at the moment they're not really in the best of form, and they've only won 1 of the last 5 matches. Is there a reason for their poor form at the moment?
So there's been a bit of drama around Salzburg the whole season, really. I think it started with the team parting ways with Adi Hutter at the end of last season after he still won the double for the side. Obviously, they weren't as good as they were under Roger Schmidt, but so they had Peter Zeidler coming in from their feeder team, Liefering.
Yeah.
So from the offset, they looked like a weaker side. They were never going to be as strong as previous seasons. But then through, injuries, more departures, Ramelow leaving, Bruno, Perez, Ilsanker, Ankerson, Sabitzer, Jurichin, so many players have left the club. They were at a point down to bare bones, I think, when Soriano was injured through most of the European qualification.
Yeah.
You can understand why they've faltered. But I think, it's a combination of like naivety in players, trying to bring like young players in, I think, but also combined with a bit of tactical naivety. I was never Zeidler's biggest fan. But, in the end, they got a decent run going before things started to fall apart again, which was centred around the falling out with Martin Hinteregger.
Yeah.
He wasn't giving 100% in training or something like that. I mean, they tried to spin it in a way that the club would carry on as normal, whether Hinteregger was there or not. But I mean, Hinteregger for me is a top player. I mean, he could easily make it in the German Bundesliga. He could probably make it a bottom half of the table club in the Premier League for me. So to not even include him in your squad, it's major news. So it detracts from, players have got to start. You're going to start getting distracted and things like that. But you just have to play a play like that. So I think that was when he's obviously Zeidler's since been sacked. I think whether they want to tell the press it's just just because he hasn't done as well as they'd hoped. Yeah, well that's definitely a reason. But I think you can't go upsetting some of your top players.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you touch on him being sacked. Is there sort of anyone that's in mind for the club who they might bring in to replace him?
I mean, there's a few names that have come out. I think I was telling you the other day. I think they were looking at getting Garcia in.
The former Watford manager, yeah.
Even Niko Kovac, who started doing some analysis for Sky Sport Austria.
Oh, right.
So he's a possibility. I mean, there was one follower I've seen on Twitter who tweeted a wish list and it included Rodgers, Sherwood, Pearson. I'm not sure they're going to go down that route, but
No.
I said when Zeidler was appointed, I got a bit of stick of it actually, because I said I thought they should bring in a manager with European pedigree, and they didn't, and people said, oh, he's a good manager, he deserves his chance. Fair enough, but it hasn't worked. So try and go back and now, approach it a different way and try and actually get someone who, got 6 months to try and win the league and then can tackle Europe next season.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the team itself, obviously a lot of people know my love for the Spanish striker Soriano.
Yeah.
He joined from Barcelona, which is it's not really a well-trodden route, shall we say, to go from one of the top teams in Europe to a team like Red Bull Salzburg and do so well. Do you know anything about the transfer itself, like how this came to happen, sort of thing?
Well, I don't know exactly how it happened, but
Yeah.
I would say that he came from Barcelona B. So
yeah.
it's a bit of a difference. Obviously, it's I think they were second tier at the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know too much about it, but I think it was one of those things where Salzburg still paid, I think, was it €500,000
Yeah.
or something like that. So there was still an element of risk behind it, but I'm not sure Spanish clubs would have wanted to risk going for him after, what was it, 4 goals in 55 games for Espanyol.
It wasn't good.
And yeah, so it was one of those things. I think Red Bull getting him was probably a bit of a coup, but for him to do as well as he has done, I don't think anyone was expecting that.
No.
I think he got 100 league goals in Austria in 126 games, the fastest person ever to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it's crazy, really.
I mean, yeah, you touch on the scoring record, and it brings nice segue on to the next question, which is why, like, he's been there for a few years now,
Mm-hmm.
and why hasn't someone, a bigger club in a more prestigious league, come in and tried to get him? Because I mean, striking options around Europe aren't exactly in a frivolous state at the moment, and he's scoring at such a great record. I mean, I know he's getting on a bit, but is there more of a reason why they haven't come in for him?
Well, the honest answer is I think they have. I'm pretty confident there will have been offers for Soriano. I think even as recently as this summer, I think Leverkusen nearly snapped him up towards the deadline day. So he could have been off this season, but he's got a couple of kids, and they're at an age where, but this is my understanding.
Yeah.
I've spoken to a few people about it, and yeah, he's got a couple of kids who are in school and stuff like that, no older than 10. And I think he's just settled. He's 30. Is he 30 now?
Yeah.
I think he's just at a point in time where, say if he was going to leave, it probably would be either to go back to Spain or, across the border to Germany. But there's no reason to. He's a club legend. That Salzburg will give him whatever he wants. I'm sure he's not on a mega wage, but if he said, "I'll stay if you buy me a new house," they'll get him.
Yeah.
I think they would do anything to keep him, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think he's not looking. He's never really looked to leave, which is nice. I mean, he's going to leave a legacy. Whoever has to replace him, yeah, I feel sorry for them.
Yeah, I mean, last season especially, and I think it's also one of the reasons that you touched on earlier about why that Salzburg have struggled more than they did. Is obviously he had the partnership with Marcel Sabitzer, and obviously they only had him on loan, but it certainly was a big loss. And is it something like they have do you think they have a backup plan for when it comes to the point where he does, or it's going to be a moment of now it's his time to move on? We need to get a replacement. Who's out there?
Well, I don't know how much you know about their feeder team, Liefering, who play in the Erstliga, because I also cover the second division as well for Football Radar, but it's not as intense. But I still watch every game.
Yeah.
And they've got some absolute cracking players who are going to come through. One of whom they signed from Zurich, from Switzerland, this summer, called Dimitri Oblin.
Yeah. And
18 years old. He'll be huge. I think they spent a couple of €1 million on him just to get him to Salzburg, and I think he played a couple of games. I think he you'll have seen he played, I think, against Malmo in the first leg at least, in the Champions League qualifications. And, he didn't look out of his depth. So, and on top of that, they've got a guy called Hwang, sorry for the pronunciation, a South Korean kid who has 11 goals this season, 6 assists, I believe, for him. They've got Preveljak, who's a Bosnian under-21 striker. He's been in and around the Salzburg team for the past 6 months, but again, really effective for the second team. So I think, they've got the money and they've got the resources and they've got the players. Maybe not one guy's going to come in and score 100 goals in 126 games, but I think they've got enough resources not to be too worried at this point. I don't think they'll ever go out and sign, spend 6 million on a 25-year-old striker, or at least I hope they don't, because I've always liked the philosophy of bringing through younger players. I mean, they've also got Havard Nielsen and Jordi Reyna, both 22, and although they haven't been great this season, there's still plenty of time. Reyna especially has shown when he was at Grodig before going out on loan to Leipzig, that I think he got 11 goals in 15 games or something like that for Grodig. No, it was 12 goals in 26 games rather. So he can do it in this league. So yeah, I think they'll be okay, but there'll always be a big hole missing once Soriano leaves.
Yeah. Okay, so final question on Salzburg itself. Obviously, you touched on it. They have a very youthful team, and I know this is a question you were looking forward to answering. One of their youthful players is a guy called Naby Keita. How good is this guy, and how far do you see him going?
Well, it's funny you asked the question, how far do I see him going? I was listening to another podcast a few weeks ago, and he was actually touted as a potential Ballon d'Or winner who's not Ronaldo or Messi.
Wow.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that's going to happen, but this guy is great. I mean, he's come on leaps and bounds. I underrated him when he joined. He joined from Istres in Ligue 2 from France, and
Chris would know a bit about that. He's our league, our French expert, so I'm sure he knows a bit about that.
Well, our French analyst at Football Radar, he was raving about him, and I was like, well, he's only 19. We'll see how he gets on. 18, 19. We'll see how he does. But the problem was they played him so deep when he first signed. He just wasn't effective at all. I thought, why have they sign this kid? He looks a mess. And there was a game against Malmo where he should have been sent off with an absolute horror challenge. And I just thought, this kid's out of his depth. And since Hutter left especially, I think it was Hutter's last 6 months of Hutter's reign. He gradually played him steam mid, bit further up, and then Zeidler came in and thought, right, we'll play him, not so much just behind the striker, but almost in like an attacking Yaya Toure role. Get the ball, just run, and fantastic. I mean, his passing, his technique, his vision. He's still rough around the edges, but no, he's excellent. Yeah, you give him maybe, I'm not sure how long he'll stay at Salzburg. He could possibly go this January, but if he stays for another 18 months after that, he'll go to a top club, no doubt about it. He's quality, he's pure quality.
Yeah. It's almost scary that he's so good that we'll probably lose him so early on from having him. Okay, so we'll move on from Salzburg, and without showing too much of my bias, the team I call the other guys, Austria Vienna, currently sitting top of the league, and they're second in the Europa League group, which includes Villarreal. Are they the favourites now to win the title, especially with considering Salzburg's struggling form?
Well, I'd say, firstly, you've got to be careful because it's Rapid Vienna who are in the Europa League, so you don't want to upset their fans too much.
Oh, no.
But, no, it's all right. It's an easy mistake to make. But Austria Vienna, top of the league, I mean, it's a group effort. I think, for me, Thorsten Fink, manager of the season so far, he's got an ideology and he's sticking to it. He's changed a couple of player roles. He's now playing Raphael Holzhauser in what he calls quarterback, or what it's been what it has been called, at least in the media, quarterback role. So sits much deeper, just can, bring play forward from that position. 2 signings from Israel, which have been huge for the club. Larry Coyote, who I'm sure you've heard about.
Yep.
I think he's got, was it eight goals now this season?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. And Roy Cahat as well, who's really starting to hit form. He got 2 assists rather, in midweek. And I've got a couple of British followers who are saying he's now a fan favourite for the club and stuff like that. So I think there haven't been too many standout players. I mean, you look at Alexander Gorgon, Alexander Grunwald and Lucas Rottpuller, and also, before he got injured, Robert Almer in goal. And, they've got a strong core. And, with Fink as well pulling the strings from the sidelines, I'm not saying they're going to definitely win the title.
Yeah.
But, if they can keep the majority of their players fit, I think they could easily scrape it, just from that consistency. Because they look like they're very difficult to beat. They're scraping these 2-1s, 1-0s, things like that. I mean, the game in midweek was a perfect example. Went 1-0 down and came back to get the 2-1. It's that's what champions do, don't they?
Yeah.
So, I think they'll be hard to beat.
Yeah, okay. So it's just seeing as I made such a horrible error with Rapid Vienna, let's just quickly touch on them. As you said, they're quite nipping at the heels of the top 2 at the moment. Mm-hmm. How are they looking, and could they be nipping in those top 2 European places?
Well, I really like Rapid this season, especially at the beginning of the season. But I mean, the Europa League's been, it's a blessing in disguise, really. They were fantastic in Europe. They should have made the Champions League group stages. Very unlucky too. Robert Beric missed a free header in injury time against Shakhtar Donetsk, which would have taken them through, promptly before leaving to go to France and then doing his ACL. So, a bit of karma. But no, obviously I want him to come back well. But I wasn't too happy when he missed that header. But I mean, the team have come on leap and bounds this season. I think Florian Kainz, huge. I was looking at some of his stats today. 5 goals and 11 assists, 8 consecutive games with an assist. Ridiculous. He's probably going to go off to Germany, whether it's now or summer, I'm not too sure. Stefan Hoffmann in midfield. He's 35, but enjoying one of his best seasons over the past few years. Thanos Petsos in midfield as well. He's back in the Greece national fold because of his performances. Stefan Stangl at left back. They've got Thomas Schrammel out with an ACL. And signed Stangl, I think, from was it Wiener Neustadt last season. Yeah. And what I didn't realise is he actually had a really close friendship with Florian Kainz from their Sturm Graz days, and that partnership down the left, I can definitely see it in the future being the national team partnership.
Yeah.
Both, the 23 and 24, and they're so good, and the synergy down the left is great, is really good. But they have been affected by injuries at the wrong time. Jan Novota, the goalkeeper's injured at the minute, and that's brought Richard Strebinger, who they signed from a Tri-Liga team in Germany. I think he was on loan there, actually. I think he might have been on loan from Werder Bremen. Let me have a... Right. But anyway, he's come in and he's not... He lost them a game, essentially, in midweek. He came from Werder Bremen. He conceded a penalty and fumbled the ball for another Admira player to tap in. So they need to be winning games against clubs like Admira. Admira are doing better, but you're not going to win the title by losing points like that. I think they've lost 7 games now this season. So it's just being able to manage the Europa League and the league at the same time is always difficult. But I mean, I feel for Austrian teams, it's always that little bit more difficult just because of the lack of money and squads aren't huge. You can bring players up from the second team, but they're going to be 16, 17, 18. Yeah. So it is very tough.
So just finishing off on the league itself, seeing as you cover everything in the league, is there any other teams or players that we should be looking out for and our listeners should keep an eye on?
Well, I did a cheeky. I was going to I've got my own blog, which
you can plug that if you want.
Well, I've been neglecting it recently, so I won't plug it. But what I was looking at doing a best 11, so I can briefly scan for a few players. So in goalkeeper, I had either Michael Esser from Sturm Graz or Robert Almer, who I mentioned, for Austria Vienna.
Yep.
Right back, Joachim Standfest. He's 35 now, but
Great name.
He plays for Wolfsburg AC, and he's really good. Michael Madel, he's played 170 times for Sturm now, and he's recently been in and around the national team. He's much improved this season, actually. Schossventner from Admira. I think he's been at the club for a few years now, but he's part of why Admira have been so good this season. Absolutely rock solid. As I said, Stangl at left back, Petsos at D mid, your boy Naby in a withdrawn centre mid role rather. A mid, I went Lucas Venuto from Grudig. He's got 7 goals and 2 assists this season, more than double than any other Grudig player has scored. Right wing, Karim Onisiwo. From what I've seen on FIFA 16, everyone loves him because of his pace. He's got 2 goals and 7 assists, and he made his national team debut last month.
Okay.
Soriano attack, and then left wing Kynes. And left wing Kynes. So there's a few players there from fringe clubs, and there's definitely other players who are in or thereabouts of making it. But
definitely not as biased as I would have been with that lineup. Okay.
Well, if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I'd have had Campbell and everyone.
Don't! He's so wasted. We'll leave the league behind, and I know you do take an interest in the Austrian national team. They've been exceptionally good with their qualifying for the Euros next year. They didn't lose a single match. So, what's your thoughts and how they've been and the reasons for their sort of progression, and then also going into how do you think they're going to do next summer?
Okay, yeah. I think key is consistency. I thought Marcel Koller's got a starting 11 who he knows, he likes, and that starting 11 is incredibly strong. I think they're 10th in the FIFA rankings now, and I think for that starting 11, I think, they probably are 10th in the world. I think they're incredibly hard to beat. I think, the fact that they went through qualification without losing, it was no surprise to me. I was just annoyed that they only got a draw against Sweden in the first qualifying game. I thought they should have won every single game. They've had a couple of hairy moments. I think was it 3-2 Montenegro away. But for the majority of it, no, they're just good players. I mean, a lot of the players now are playing in Germany and Premier League and places like that.
Yeah.
So the coaching they get outside of the national team, is top class. And you've got players like David Alaba and Janušević and Arnautović, good players. Alaba could get in any team in the world. Arnautović is a very good Premier League player for me. Janušević last season especially, top Bundesliga player. You look at the centre backs, Dragovic, Champions League player. Even Hinteregger for me. When he's fit, he's an international centre back. So I think they've got a really good team.
Okay. So you mentioned him. I don't think you can stray too far from mentioning him when you're talking about Austria, David Alaba. The guys on the pod, a lot of people know watching this as an Arsenal fan personally. If there was one player I think would do wonders in that league and just that team, David Alaba for me would be an amazing player for them. But he's still young, which is what I find most impressive about him, and what he's doing at Bayern Munich and not just Austria. But Austria have shown that even without him, I believe it was they won the game against Russia without him. Am I right in saying that? Yeah?
Yeah, it was 1-0 away.
Yeah, so without him, they're still winning games. to even cement that 10th place in the world even more. But back to him, sort of how far can he go in terms of his quality like progression? Because he's doing so well at such a young age. How much more is there to come from him?
I mean, from what I've seen, because I very rarely see him play for Bayern Munich. It's normally with the national team. You know, he's scarily good. You know, I'm not saying he's going to dribble past 11 players and score a goal. But
Does for me on FIFA.
Yeah. But no, I think the sky's the limit with him. I think the one issue is his injuries. You know, he's always picking up injuries, and probably suited at Arsenal, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's just that's the one thing that could prevent him from being as good as he could be. He's just constantly having 2-3 weeks out, 6-8 weeks out, and it's got to be detrimental down the line. Thankfully, like you said, when he was missing for Austria, it didn't matter in the end with Stefan Ilsanker coming in. But it's when he gets to like 28, 29, you don't know whether these injuries will have affected him in the long run.
Okay, so last question in terms of Austria, Marcel Sabitzer, Sabitzer. I'm not the best in terms of German pronunciation, but yeah. So this guy did so well last season at Red Bulls, and now he's back at Leipzig, who are doing exceptionally well. He's played every game, and he scored 5 goals. Is that? Do you think he's dipped, or do you think this is just he's gone into a bit of a more difficult league? But he's definitely a talent, isn't he?
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Sabitzer. Like, absolutely loved him for Salzburg. I liked him when he was at Rapid prior to that as well. And I would mention as well. I think he came through, or at least spent time with the Admira youth team, and they bring through some brilliant players. But yeah, since he's gone to Leipzig, which he didn't actually want to do. He was kind of forced into it by Rangnick. He came out in the media and saying, I'd rather stay at Salzburg, and was then had to backtrack his comments effectively. But I think his role has been different. I think at Salzburg, he started off playing on the wings, but then it was pretty clear he was better when he was used as a second attacker with Soriano. I think especially after Allen left.
Yeah, for China or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, he went to China and then he did his ACL as well. If you leave the Austrian league, you're just asking to get But yeah, so he's been in a different role. I think he's mainly been either on the right wing or in A mid for Leipzig. And they've signed, obviously, like in a club that brings in loads of new players, it's always going to be difficult. I mean, he's gone across with like Ilsanker and Galaxy this season. Yeah. So you've got a couple of familiar faces, but I think the figurehead of that team was always going to be, is it Selk or Selke?
Yeah, the striker, yeah.
Yeah, it was always going to be him, brought in from Werder Bremen. So I think he was always, potentially, always going to be second fiddle. I think he's still done well. I don't think Leipzig have particularly proven to be prolific goal scorers this season anyway. And from what I've heard, he's still arguably their best player. But I hope he does well. I wish he had more involvement with the national team. Ruben Okotie tends to be the second striker behind Mark Janko.
Yeah.
Whereas I'd wish Koller would, just throw Sabitzer in there, because I think he's proven that he can score at national level.
Yeah, the goal he scored against Montenegro, the winner, in the last few minutes. I mean, that was a great goal. Yeah,
it got a little story about that. It was quite funny. Went out to Austria just on a holiday with my girlfriend, and
as you do.
Yeah, well, and got in the taxi. The taxi driver had the radio on. I said, "Oh, what's the score?" And he went, "I think it's 0-0." And I think it was actually 1-0 to Montenegro at this point. And I tweeted, I said, well, first time I'm not watching Austria play live, and they're losing. So I get to the hotel, stick on the game at half time. Second half, absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Nearly broke the sound barrier when Sabitzer scored. So, girlfriend jumped out her skin. But yeah, no, I was really happy for him. Really happy for Austria. It was a cracking goal as well.
Yeah. Okay, so just wrapping this up. Obviously, our listeners know we had Jason last week covering the NSL, and we asked him this question, or these two questions. What is your favourite moment from your respective leagues, so the Austrian Bundesliga? What's your favourite moment in the league's history that you can remember?
So my favourite moment of the Austrian, but is that this season?
Whenever you want, mate.
I think it had to be the beginning of last season. It stands out. Salzburg beat Rapid 5-1, opening game of the season, and Campbell did the celebration where he did the Ronaldo celebration, took his top off, and did his muscles. And I mean, comedy value alone, absolutely brilliant. But it was also the fact that it was meant to be, it was meant to be much tighter. Like Rapid were coming into the game much stronger, and yeah, just blew them away. It was absolutely crazy.
Okay.
And the second question, sorry.
The second question, yeah. This doesn't have to be necessarily in terms of Austria, but your favourite hipster player in world football. But you can have one for world football and one for the Austrian League if you like.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Favourite player? Favourite hipster player? Oh, that is a tough one. Okay, I'll go with one from the Austrian League. It's not necessarily my favourite player, but I think he's going to be a very good player, and I think he's relatively hipster. Sandy Lovren from Sturm Graz. He's I think he's 17 now. And
that's real hipster, that is.
Yeah, he's my internet's just gone down. But yeah, I think he's captain of the Austria under-18 team.
Okay.
He's a central midfielder. He's already made his Bundesliga debut. I think he's going to be a big name in the future. I think he's already been linked with the likes of Bayern Munich and Juventus and stuff like that. Right. So he's my hipster / one to watch.
Yeah.
Definitely. In terms of world football, no, I think you guys can decide that one for me. I spend all my time watching Austrian football. Any Newcastle players? Oh God, you can have was it Sabtko?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, he made the bench a couple of times. So we'll have him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, Tim. I really appreciate that. So.
No worries, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Good. We have to have you on again to have a catch up about how the league's going, maybe at the end of the season or something like that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. So, guys, make sure you follow us at the FH Podcast. Keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy, and thanks for listening.